Hello students, now we will discuss about the elements. In my earlier classes I already talk about elements, but now I will explain you the properties of metals, non-metal and metalloid. What are these? Elements can be divided into three parts on the basis of properties, which is metal, non-metal and metalloid. Now today we will discuss about the properties of metal. Let's start. Metals are malleable. What is this malleable? Malleable is a property of metals in which we are able to convert the metal into thin sheet. When metals can be beaten into thin sheets with hammer without breaking, it is converted into thin sheet. That's why we are known as metal as a malleable. So it is a very high malleability, because of that property. What are these metals? Which is copper, you can say copper, gold and silver, aluminium. So all are malleable because they have a properties of malleability. We already seen our kitchen. You can see your kitchen aluminium foil. It is very commonly used in our kitchen, aluminium foil. So what is foil? Foil is a thin sheets of metal. So it is a thin sheet of aluminium. So silver foil, you are heard about that. Silver foil, gold foil. It is a thin sheets of gold foil and silver foil, right? So now let's talk about another property, which is metals are ductile. Ductile means metals can be drawn into thin wires. So metal can be uh, drawn into thin wires. For example, gold and silver are best ductile metals. So 100 milligram, can you imagine 100 milligram of highly ductile metal like silver, gold, that are drawn into thin wires, which is about 200 meter. So 100 milligram is converted into 200 meter long wire. That means metals has a property of ductility because they are converted into thin, very thin wires. So let's talk about another topic, which is metals are good conductor of heat and electricity. Like all the metals are good conductor of heat and electricity because they are able to pass the heat and electricity. For example, you just use a utensil in our kitchen. You see all the utensil. In which what is the property of these utensil? Uh, Almost all the utensils made up of metals, and they have a ability to pass the heat. Like copper, aluminium metals are good conductor of heat. Like cooking utensil and water are also good conductor of heat, right? Because they has a highest thermal conductivity. So copper and aluminium are copper and aluminium has high thermal conductivity. That's why they are able to conduct heat and electricity. So in you can say in electrical conductivity. Silver is the best conductor of electricity. The metal like iron, mercury has greater resistance to flow the current. So they have lower electrical conductivity. So it is a exception like iron and mercury. So mercury has a greater resistance to flow the current because mercury is liquid in room temperature. So that's why there is a they is able to resistance the current, and they have a low electrical conductivity. So they are not able to good conductor of electricity. So their exception is mercury. That is exception. Okay, which is mercury. Now we let's talk about the another property, which is the metals are lustrous. What is the meaning of lustrous? Lustrous means shining. Metals has a property in which their upper surface is very shiny, and they can be polished. So, the property of shiny appearance of metal makes them useful in making like jewelry, decorating things. Metals are lustrous. You can say you see always seen gold and silver. They are lustrous metal. Okay. Lustrous means shine. So let's talk about another property, which is metals are hard. Metals are hard. We know about that almost all the metals are solid in room temperature. So all the metals are hard, and except sodium and potassium. That is the exception of this, which is sodium and potassium. Because sodium and potassium are the soft one metal, we are able to cut with knife. So they are very soft. But it is a only exception case. Instead of these two, all metals are hard. We are not able to cut with knife, right? So our next property is metals are strong. They have high tensils. Tensils means they are heavy in weight. So metals can hold large weight without breaking. They have a capacity to hold the large weight things. Right? For example, iron metal is very strong, having a high tensile strength. Due to this, iron metal is used in construction of bridges and buildings. Right? That means have holding capacity of high weight. So let's talk about another topic, which is metals are solid at room temperature. So I already told you metals are solid at room temperature, but exception is there. What is this exception? Exception is mercury. Right? All the metals are solid at room temperature except mercury. Mercury is a liquid at room temperature. Okay, so let's talk about another example. Properties. Metals are generally high melting point and boiling point, right? Because they are solid and they have a lot of high melting point and boiling point to melt and boil. Okay, but there is also a exception, which is sodium and potassium, right? Iron has a high melting point, which is 1535 degrees Celsius, and the copper has also a high melting point, which is 1083 degrees Celsius. But potassium and sodium has less than 100 degrees Celsius. Sodium and potassium is the exception, and its boiling point and boiling point is 100 degrees Celsius. So their melting point is 100 degrees Celsius, less than 100 degrees Celsius. Even one more exception is there, but which is gallium, right? Gallium has a very low melting point. Even it is melt in hand because of they are melt because of our hand temperature. You can imagine that means their melting point is too low. That's why they are melt because of our hand temperature. So let's talk about another properties. So our next property is metal have high density. So metal has a high density like iron. Iron has density is 7.8 gram per centimeter cube, which is quite high. But we talk about like sodium and potassium. Actually, their density is very low because they are very soft. That's why their density is low. So and the iron is quite high, which is 1.8 gram per centimeter cube, right? So let's talk about another which is sonorous, right? Metals are sonorous. What is the meaning of sonorous? Sonorous, when we strike anything like hammer on metal, it's produce a sound. So because of producing a sound, we are say that metals are sonorous. So like you struck a bell that they produce a sound, like you can say take another example like manjira and wires for string musical instruments such as violin, guitar. Actually they produce a sound, right? Because they have a property of metals, right? So what is the meaning sound produced? Okay, so all metal produce sound. Let's take another property, which is the last property. Metals have silver or gray color. So but there is exception, which is copper and gold. Copper and gold, because copper has reddish brown in color and the gold has yellow in color. And the cooking utensil, electric fan, swing machine, car, buses, truck, they are all made up of metals, and there has a mixture of metals. So that is known as alloy. So there is a another new thing, which is alloy. Alloy is a mixing of metal. So there is a mixing means there is a mixing of metals or non-metal, whatever which is made by like two metals, which is made up of metal and non-metal. So it is known as a alloy. There is no we can say like in zinc is alloy because it is made up of copper and other metal. Okay, so that's it is the properties of metal, and in our next class we will discuss about the properties of non-metal. So thank you, continue with me, and bye bye.